Okay. So screen share again. Right. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we are going to learn about phonological rules. We talk about all these different kinds of things that have happened. We've talked about, all sorts of different kinds of processes happening. We've talked about how, even in language, when we speak, we do many different kinds of things. And the phonological rules will help us understand the mathematical aspect of language, the mathematical aspect of sound system as to how sounds are interpreted by each speaker in their own languages. And these rules are something that we grow up with. When we are from a very small age, we acquire these rules. If you remember when you were doing Introduction to Linguistics, there was something about Chomsky's LAD, language acquisition device. So it's something like that. These rules help us understand or even how languages work. Especially, suppose if you want to be a teacher of a language, if you want to be a teacher of the English language, if you know what the native speakers do, how they change certain things when they are speaking, you can make your students sound more native-like, can help them sound more native-like. So these phonological rules are important. So we're going to learn about phonological rules. We're going to learn how to write these phonological rules because, like I said, this is sort of like a mathematical equation. We're going to have to learn how to write these mathematical equations. And we're going to look at all the different kinds of phonological processes there are. And from that, how we get all the different kinds of rules. Okay? All right. Now, the smallest meaningful sound segment, this is a recap, just so that we know how to write the rules again. So the smallest meaningful sound segment is a phoneme. And phonemes are always written in slash brackets. All right. So we're going to remember that phonemes are always written in slash brackets. And an allophone is a predictable phonetic variant of a phoneme. So if we can predict where a sound is going to be, that is usually the allophone of a phoneme. Because you can say that if in a word it occurs in a certain position, then it will sound like this or this. So that is basically an allophone. And allophones are always within third brackets. Okay. So phonemes will always be in slash brackets and allophones will always be in third brackets. And this is important. If at any point I talk about a sound and I'm writing about a sound and I use the slash brackets, know that I am talking about a phoneme at this point. I'm not talking about allophones. In allophones, you have to always describe more of its features, which you don't have to do with phonemes. The transcription that you have to do, in the exam is a phonemic transcription and not the allophonic or phonetic transcription. Because it is a phonemic transcription, you don't have to give as many kinds of details as you would have to give were it an allophonic transcription. So always remember that phonemes do not carry, you don't have to give as many details. But with allophones, you have to give a lot of different kinds of details about voicing, aspiration, all those things. So phonemes are always in slash brackets and allophones are always in third brackets. Now, how do we write rules? To write rules, you always start with, say, you want to talk about and you want to say where the allophone of a phoneme occurs in that language. So you start with your slash bracket, that's phoneme, and then an arrow, which shows that it becomes this allophone, and then you give the allophone, slash. The slash means that you are now going to be describing the environment. So the phoneme becomes an allophone in this kind of environment. here you can see if I put it in like a mathematical equation, it becomes the phoneme A becomes the allophone B slash. Slash means that I am now going to be describing the environment that in which it becomes the allophone. So phoneme A becomes the allophone B when it occurs in the environment between C and D. Notice here that around both C and D, I have used first brackets. First brackets are used to show that something can be optional. If suppose C and D were not optional, that no, they have to be there, only between these two sounds can the allophone change or occur, then C and D would be without any kind of brackets. That means they must be there. Okay. But if it is optional, C can be there. Even if it's not there, it will still change in a certain way, or D can be there, or it can be just C, and then after that, the allophone will occur. In that case, you have the brackets there. Okay. So let's look at some of the rules that we have in English. Some of the rules, some of the sounds that we know, the allophones of those sounds that we know of. So we know that we have the sound pa. And pa, one of the allophones is the aspirated pa. Where does pa occur? Can anyone tell me where does pa occur?
At the beginning of a word.
Right, thank you. So it always occurs at the beginning of a word or the initial position of a word. Hence, if you look at the formula that I've shown here, you have the phoneme P, which is in slash brackets, and then you have the arrow showing that it is going to become the allophone. And then I have the allophone P inside third bracket. And then I have a slash showing that, okay, after this slash, I'm going to talk about the kind of environment that I find P in, the kind of, where its position is in a word. And since it is in the initial position, you see there's an underscore or a space, and before that there is a hashtag. The hashtag means that there are no sounds here. This is the initial position of the word. So a hashtag, then a space, and that space or the underscore that you have there means that that is the place where you will find the allophone. So let me show you on my board. And that way you will be able to understand what it is. Why can I not see my board? Can you all mute yourself, please? Hello. All right. Okay. So for some reason, I cannot see my screen. Okay, I cannot see my screen. Why can I not see my screen? Let me go. If I can't see my screen, I can't write. Like, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, I can see myself now. All right, so I'm gonna write. So you have the phoneme in slash brackets, right? Can everyone see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
And then it becomes, you should give the arrow to show that this P will become this allophone. So you have the allophone here, pa. So like I said, an allophone always carries more information. This is showing aspiration. This sound is not showing aspiration. So the phoneme pa will become the allophone pa. Now, if I put a slash, this means now after the slash I'm going to describe where it occurs as pa. Okay, because it's a predictable environment, remember. So it will always be in that exact same environment. So the environment over here is, so suppose this space is where pa will occur, right? So this is where pa will occur. So pa occurs in the initial position of a word. So there can't be any sound before it. Hence, here we put this hashtag. And this hashtag indicates that there is no sound before this space. And this is where pa will occur. In the same way, if we want to give another, say, allophone of pa, so pa, remember the unrestricted one, the allophone. This unrestricted one, the one that occurs at the end of the word, where you say, when you say a word like stop, you don't release the pa, right? You don't say stop, right? So when you say stop, your lips remain closed and you don't release it. So it's the unreleased pa. Where does that occur? Again, want to list the environment, so put a slash, and then I'm going to list the environment. The environment being, this is the place where it will occur, this sound. And so, what should I do after that? What do you think?
We should put the hash
Where?
at the end.
Right. So after it, we push the hashtag. So if you push this hash after this symbol, after the space, it means there are going to be no sounds after it. And this sound is going to be the very final sound in that word. It's not that difficult to understand. So writing a rule, and it's how simple. It's a mathematical equation telling you exactly what happens in English. You don't have to use so many words. And linguists usually just give each other the rules and they read it, oh, so this is what happens in a language. And that's how you. Now you have, if we remember, this sound pa has three allophones, right? It has pa, it has the unrestricted pa, and it has the pa, the plain pa. Now where does this plain pa occur? So
In the
pa,
middle.
right, not just middle, it occurs after S. It can happen before a vowel, after a consonant, anywhere else, right? So pa remains pa. Now we are going to, again, environment, elsewhere. Everywhere else, it remains this. Except for these two positions, everywhere else, it is pronounced as pa. Only if it is in the initial position do we find pa, or if it is at the final position, we find the unrestricted pa. Make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Very difficult?
No, ma'am.
Just something a little new that you don't have to use as many words and it becomes a little mathematical, but it's not that difficult. So there are many rules like that. We're going to be looking at all the different kinds of rules this way. All right. Let's go back to our screen. Okay. So, like I said, the phoneme becomes an allophone, and then after the slash, you describe the environment. The environment can be anything, depending on where that allophone occurs. Okay. So, right. Now we're going to start with the phonological process. The phonological processes are the ones that are going to give us all the different kinds of rules. So there are many kinds of phonological processes. We are going to talk about the main phonological processes first, and then we will talk about some of the secondary, not so important phonological processes, but they do occur in languages. And please remember, all of these phonological processes are found across the board among all languages. Some more or less in certain languages, but a few of these processes are found in, especially these main processes are found in almost all languages. Now, when we talk about these phonological processes and the different kinds of, things that are occurring, please remember we are not talking about um, the written script. Okay, so the way you spell a word, the way it is supposed to be pronounced. This is about connected speech. This is about when you are speaking fast, when you are talking to someone, not really thinking about what you're saying, and you make a lot of different kinds of changes in the language. Spoken language, very different from written language, right? When we do formal languages, informal language, we talk about all these different kinds of differences that there are. So something like that. This is about connected speech. It is about fast speech. It is about spoken language. So a lot of these processes happen just because we speak, we are pronouncing these words, and also because of the kind of respiratory system that we have and how we use and what we use depending on that, these processes have come into being. All right. So the main phonological processes are assimilation, harmony, deletion or elision, epenthesis, and palatalization. So I'm going to start with assimilation. And today, hopefully, I will finish assimilation and then we'll move on to the, I don't know if we will do harmony or not. It depends on how much time we have. Okay, so assimilation. What does the word assimilation on its own mean? Can anyone tell me? Just the word assimilation, what does it mean?
To combine.
Okay, to combine. Yeah, it does. It does mean, it also means you change to be like something else, right? So if I want to assimilate to my culture, I will have to do certain things to be part of my culture. So it means changing yourself to be like something else, okay? To be more similar to something else. So assimilation in for the phonological processes, it simply means that one sound wants to be like its neighboring sound. Okay. One sound wants to be like its neighboring sound. So there are two types of assimilation, progressive assimilation and regressive assimilation. Now, before I say more about progressive or regressive, let me first tell you what it means when I say neighboring sound. Okay. So here, I'm going to stop and I'm going to show you what it means to be a neighboring sound. All right. So here you have, say, the word Aldo. Okay. I think it'll be better if I use phonetic trends. Okay. So you have Aldo. All right. Now here, suppose this D, we are going to look at this sound, duh. Okay. The neighboring sound for duh is going to be the sounds that are immediately next to it. So it will be la, or it will be o. A can never be a neighboring sound. All right? So any word, you give me a word. Give me a word.
Apple.
Apple? Okay. So, apple. Or I can even make it syllabic and go apple. All right, apple. So if we look at pa here in this sound, in this word, apple, for pa, Which one is its neighboring sound?
A and schwa.
Right. A and schwa. L is not a neighboring sound here. Now, in the same word, if this is the word we're looking at and looking at fa, what is its neighboring sound? What are the neighboring sounds here?
A and the syllabic la.
Right, a and la. So, depending, so exactly whatever is right next to it, those sounds are the ones that are the neighboring sounds. And for assimilation, we will only look at the sounds next to it, depending on whether we need to look at the sound before it or whether do we need to look at the sound that comes after it, okay? That is what is going to be important for us for assimilation. It does not matter whether it is a vowel or whether it is a consonant. All that matters is that it is a sound that is right next to it on its either side, depending on which side we need to look at. Okay? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so going back to my screen. Okay, so like I said, there are two types of assimilation. You have progressive assimilation and we have regressive assimilation. So let's look first at progressive assimilation. Now, within progressive assimilation, there are two types of assimilation. One is total progressive assimilation and the other is partial progressive assimilation. Now, progressive assimilation basically means that the first sound will influence the second sound, and the second sound will change and become like the first sound. Now, if it is a total progressive assimilation, then the second sound will completely change and become exactly like the first sound. But if it is a partial progressive assimilation, then the second sound will just partially change. It will take on one characteristic from the first sound and become like the first sound. So again, I'm going to stop screen share. I'm going to write this and I'm going to explain that to you. Okay. Right. So the example that we had, so like I said, how is it different? How will you know what is progressive and what is regressive? So the all they, okay? In fast speech, all they, can you see all they?
Yes, ma'am.
If I transcribe it, it becomes all and, okay? All they, right? This is the transcription of all they. In fast speech, a lot of the time when speakers are saying these together, like all they ever wanted to do was, you know, go there and play ball. Something like this. So instead of saying all they ever wanted to do was play ball, they end up saying something like all they ever wanted to do was play ball. All they ever wanted to do was play ball. So what happens here? This is the first sound. This is the second sound. The first sound influences the second sound, and the second sound becomes like the first sound. So if you look at the progression, la, and this is total progressive assimilation, da has completely lost itself. Da is gone, finished. He has become exactly like la. Okay, so, and if you look at the progression, it is going forward. That is why it is called progressive assimilation. Okay, and because the has completely changed, there is like nothing left of the becomes exactly like la, becomes another la over here. You can see it is total progressive assimilation. Progressive means the first sound will influence the second sound and change the second sound. Okay, that means this is progressive assimilation. And if it completely changes the second sound, then it is total progressive assimilation. Okay? Yes? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's see. As for, again, let's look at the partial progressive assimilation. For partial progressive assimilation, you have, we will talk about the English plural morpheme the. All right. Let's talk about the, and I'm going to stop share. Look. All right. So if we know that the English plural morpheme is the. And if it occurs with a voiced sound, it remains the. So for dogs, right? Dogs. You have the, dogs. But suppose it occurs with a word like cat. With cat, when you put this the, it becomes cats. So again, the first sound, and this is the second sound, the first sound influences the second sound, but here, the second sound does not become another T. It doesn't completely change. It only changes the voicing, right? Only one characteristic. So there isn't a complete, a total assimilation. There is a partial assimilation here. So here you have partial progressive assimilation. This is total progressive assimilation, and this is partial progressive assimilation. In total progressive assimilation, the first sound influences the second sound and changes it completely to become like itself. That is total progressive assimilation. In partial progressive assimilation, the first sound influences the second sound, but doesn't change it completely. The second sound only takes up one characteristic of it, and it changes. And over here, we can see the voicing has changed. So that is partial progressive assimilation. How do you know whether an assimilation is progressive or regressive? Always take the two sounds that are influencing each other and then draw an arrow. If the arrow goes from left to right, then that is progressive assimilation. And now we're going to do regressive assimilation. You will see that the arrow will point from right to left. Okay? All right. So did we understand progressive assimilation, total and partial?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Yes. Does anyone want to say anything? Okay, so I'm back to my screen.
I'm 59. I have joined the class.
Okay, 59. I will. Thank you.
Ma'am, I believe two students joined later and commented in the chat.
Acha, I will look at that. Thank you. Okay, so then we have. So we've seen in progressive assimilation, you can have total progressive assimilation or you can have partial progressive assimilation. And we looked at two examples from English, okay? All right, so let's look at regressive assimilation. Now, what happens in regressive assimilation? In regressive assimilation, again, you have two types of assimilation. You have total regressive assimilation, and you also have partial regressive assimilation. Now, in total regressive assimilation, you have Again, we're going to look at examples from English. And what I'm going to do is I'm again going to write it on the board so that you can see how it is regressive assimilation and not progressive. Okay, so stop screen share. Okay, let me just first write it first. It'll be easier. That person and all right. Okay, so over here, if we look at the word, we have two words here. We have that person. So we are first going to transcribe that. All right, that person. Okay, and here what happens is this P influences T. So this is the first sound, this is the second sound, right? So second sound influences the first sound and changes it completely, and it becomes that person. And as you can see, it has completely changed it. T has become P. And if you look at if you draw an arrow, the arrow goes from right to left. The second sound has influenced the first sound and has assimilated it and changed it completely to be like itself. So complete, total regressive assimilation. So regressive assimilation means the second sound will influence the first sound and change it. So that is regressive assimilation. And you can see it is going from, if you draw an arrow, it is going from this way to that way, from right to left. If we look at the partial assimilation, when a word like can, in most, most Americans or even British, when they speak it, what happens is instead of just saying can, they will end up saying something like this in actual speech. Do you remember what this is? This diacritic?
Is it nasal?
Right, it's nasalization. Thank you, Shefa. It's nasalization. What happens over here, again, first sound, second sound. The second sound is a nasal sound. It influences the vowel that occurs before it and makes it nasalized. So can becomes can. And the vowel is still a vowel. It has not become a consonant. It has not become the nasal n sound. There is assimilation, but only in one characteristic. The vowel has only taken on the nasalization aspect from the nasal sound. Hence, this is partial regressive assimilation. Again, the second sound is influencing the first sound, and you can see the progression as being from right to left. So this is regressive. Remember, if you remember cat, it was from ta was influencing za and it was becoming sa. So that is progressive assimilation. So this is the partial progressive assimilation and this is partial regressive assimilation. Okay? Can you see the difference?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So that is assimilation in terms of regressive and progressive and partial and total. Now, that does not end there. If Now, assimilation can take place in following ways. The ones that I showed are part of the types that I'm going to be talking about now. You have assimilation of place, you have assimilation of manner, and you have assimilation of voice. These are the things that can happen when assimilation takes place. So when assimilation takes place, assimilation happens in these following ways. One, it can be an assimilation of place, it can be an assimilation of manner, or it can be an assimilation of voice. Now, when one sound assimilates to its neighboring sound and changes its own place of articulation to match the sound next to it, then it is assimilation of place. So if we look at this sound, that person over here in this one, if you can see, what is T? What is the T sound? What is it?
Alveolar plosive.
It's an alveolar plosive. And what is Pa?
Bilabial plosive.
Bilabial.
Bilabial plosive. So they are the same manner of sound, only they have two different kinds of places of articulation. And what is happening over here is they're changing the place of articulation. This sound is assimilating to this sound's place of articulation. The only thing that has changed over here is place of articulation. Because of that, changing of place of articulation, it has assimilated its place of articulation to the bilabial place of articulation, lost its alveolarness, and because it lost its alveolarness and taken on its bilabial, the other sound's bilabialness, they are both stopped, so it becomes exactly like that other sound and it becomes that person. So this is an example of assimilation of place. Another assimilation of place is in, say, a word like hand bag. Okay, so handbag. In handbag, the two processes going on, and we will talk about that other process later. The "d" gets deleted, so it becomes first handbag. And then there is assimilation between these two in place of articulation. What is the place of articulation for "b"?
Bilabial.
Bilabial.
Bilabial. So is there any bilabial nasal?
Ma.
Yes, ma'am. Ma.
Right. And this is an alveolar nasal, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if there is a assimilation in place of articulation, the word will become handbag. Where's my handbag? I can't find my handbag. I can't find my handbag. Where's my handbag? So if you can see, in fast speech, a lot of this changes. And so instead of saying handbag, they'll say handbag. Another thing happens with something like words like, say, pumpkin. Instead of saying, pumpkin. I'm নিজেই spelling ভুলে যাচ্ছি সব. Pumpkin. I don't know if this is the correct spelling. Is this the correct spelling? Pumpkin? Or is there P there? Pumpkin. Anyway, a lot of children, a lot of adults I saw in America, they would pronounce it as pumpkin. So you have, again, assimilation in place of articulation. All right. So moving on to the next ones. If I go to, so did we understand place of articulation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. All right, so place assimilation, sorry, the assimilation of place. In the same way, you have assimilation of manner. Same thing is again happening. When one sound assimilates to its neighboring sound and changes its own manner of articulation to match the sound next to it, then you have assimilation of manner. Now, again, all of these, assimilation of place or assimilation of manner or assimilation of voice, they can either be total or partial. They can either be progressive or they can be regressive. So over here again, you have the word past 5 and ta and fa over here assimilate to each other. Which one is influencing which sound? Can any of you tell me? In this assimilation.
Fa is influencing ta.
The fa is influencing ta. So is it progressive or regressive?
Regressive.
Regressive.
Okay, so it is regressive assimilation. And what happens here? As you can see, ta is a stop, fa is a fricative, and ta is alveolar, and fa is
Labiodental.
labiodental. So when past 5 becomes past 5, is here what is happening is the ta sound is keeping its place of articulation, which is alveolar. It is still alveolar, but instead of a stop, it is becoming a fricative. And the alveolar fricative is, hence, instead of past 5, it's past 5. So you can see that there is a change in manner. The stop is becoming a fricative because it is trying to assimilate with another fricative. And so it becomes like a fricative. And we have a lot of examples like that in Bangla. So hopefully you'll be able to find them. So that is assimilation of manner. Next, the last one is assimilation of voice, which we've already done. We've looked at partial progressive assimilation, where we looked at the plural morpheme za. So when one sound assimilates to its neighboring sound and changes its state of glottis to match the sound next to it, for example, we have over here either it loses its voicing or gains its voicing, any one of this. So over here you have dogs, the plural morpheme is za. It remains za when it occurs with voiced sounds. But if it occurs with something like a voiceless sound, ta, it takes on that voicelessness. It loses its voicing and it becomes voiceless. So it becomes ta. Over here, the change is in the state of glottis. So this is assimilation of voice. So assimilation of place, assimilation of manner, and assimilation of voice are basically the 3 ways that assimilation can happen. Either there can be a change in place, or there can be a change in manner, or there can be a change in voice. And that kind of change can either be progressive or it can be regressive. And within that progressive, it can either be total progressive assimilation or partial progressive assimilation, or it can be total regressive assimilation or partial regressive assimilation. So that is basically all there is in terms of assimilation. Did we understand assimilation?
Yes, ma'am.
So now, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay, so today I'm going to stop it here. I think we've done quite a bit. Let's digest all this information and understand what all of this is. Once I will be sending you this Zoom recording, I will be also sending you some slides with some audio recording so that you can again understand what this is, because we need to understand these processes really well. And what I will want you to do is you are now going to find examples from Bangla of partial, total, progressive, regressive, place, manner, voice assimilation. You're going to find all of that on your own now. It's not very difficult. If you start thinking about what you do in your language, when you say something, do we really say how we write something? You will find a lot of examples. I know you will. So you will find those examples and I will make a worksheet where you will give me those examples. And I will look at them and I will tell you whether they're correct or whether they're incorrect. Okay? That way, at least you will know that you have understood assimilation well. Okay? So try to do that work. So if anybody wants to say something, you can. Otherwise, I will end the class here today.
Right, ma'am. A few students commented on the chat when they joined.
Yeah, I am writing that down now. So yeah, Murshid, if you can help me with the names or roll numbers, that would be great. So it's 59, right? Tosifa Farhat, I can see, and there's Afia Haq Chaudhry, okay. Jahangir Alam. What's your roll number, Mr. Jahangir Alam? Can anyone tell me? Nahida Nawaz, Jahangir Alam.
Jahangir Alam's roll number is 38.
38. Thank you. And Nahida Nawaz?
Roll 23.
23. Nahida Nawaz. Nahida Nawaz means that I get DSC. So who else? So I can see Afia, Jahangir, Muhammad Rafiqul Islam. So we gotta check. Muhammad Rafiqul Islam and Rafiqul Islam roll number 14.
49.
Urusa, 49. 49. Rafiqul Islam. 14 and Urusa 14. Urusa Firdos. Qazia Saduzzaman too. I gave Qazia Saduzzaman. All right, so I have everyone's presence here. Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm going to be meeting you next week or not, depending on how much of the work gets done, of the homework I give you and the material. I will be assigning you something different. But I'm going to try and take the next class, and hopefully we'll be able to get through more processes, because the assimilation is, I think, the biggest, where there's like so many different types of assimilation. But after that, harmony, deletion, yeah. I will also be sending you 2 videos on assimilation. Please watch those videos, because they actually tell you how assimilation works in British English. You will look at it and you will understand whether it's progressive or regressive, and that's what you're going to tell me, and also whether it's partial or total assimilation. Okay? Okay then, well, goodbye, and stay safe, stay indoors, stay clean, and hope all of you stay well. Okay?
Have a
Bye-bye.
good day, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.